Hi there, Megghan Thompson here with Megghan Thompson Coaching, and we are here to discuss the difference between proactive and reactive self-care. If you are finding yourself trying to help yourself manage your emotions, decrease the emotional stress and overwhelm that you're experiencing on a daily basis, you're a parent or you're a professional who works with children, whether that be teacher, doctor, nurse, therapist, school counselor, educator, and you're working on changing the dynamic that you have inside in your emotions, then today is a show for you. I want to work on your mindset, your perspective, and your shifts that you need to make sure that you can stay calm, but also just hold it down and be the leader that you know that you are here to be. So let's go ahead and address this topic today. I think it's a really important one for us to discuss, and it's been a theme that I've been working on in this podcast for a couple of weeks now, and I want to dive into a piece that I hear a lot of parents get stuck on in managing your emotions. And I know for sure that a lot of professionals working in the field who also follow us are challenged with this as well. So we're going to talk about it today. Okay, so here at MTC, we help parents and professionals manage their mindset, shift their dynamic in breaking out of their own internal strife and overwhelm so that they can become much more capable of changing how they impact children, whether that be through their direct work as parents or in their work in the profession. And so part of what we do is advise parents and professionals on how to manage their own emotions and make that shift, and as well as working with parents directly through our signature program. So let's talk about what it takes for you as an adult to manage your mindset. I know that you might have been trying for quite some time to keep yourself calm and manage how you communicate to others and slow down your mind from racing and jumping to conclusions. And probably the most common way is by signing yourself up for appointments. Whether that be your daily walk with yourself or your kids or your family, your weekly therapy session, or your weekly or a couple of times a month massage, pedicures, going to swim class yourself or any other exercise class. And I want to note that these skills, while definitely necessary, we call them self-care for a reason, because you're taking care of yourself and the appointment is set up for you to give yourself the full focus of the hour or whatever. And you're engaging in a behavior that is healthy for you, right? And I want to discuss the difference between thinking and behaving today, and how these skills that you have plugged into your schedule can often be seen as a good thing, right? And I want that to be true. It is a skill to keep your schedule on prioritizing your own health and your own emotional needs. And if these are the skills that you're using to help yourself stay calm during the day, stop being so worried, stop being so indecisive, if you're worried that you might be people-pleasing or bending over backwards for other people at work or in your family, where you just find yourself giving in to your kids or your spouse and not spending any time other than that hour a couple times a week on yourself, then I really want us to have this conversation with you today, because especially if you're highly sensitive, but even if you're not, because I'm not, I really want to make sure that we're talking about what's important when it comes to managing your emotions, decreasing the intensity that you experience on a daily basis, so that you can go through life on a daily basis feeling peace in your heart, because that's what we're designed to do. This is exactly why we're here on this earth. Your focus, your mission on your heart, your purpose, whether that be to raise children and work in the marketplace, or both, or one or the other. Either way, very, very, very important job here that you have to do. And I want you to make sure that you're giving yourself the emotional space today in today's show to have this conversation about how much stamina you actually have to work, to engage in your mission, to care for your children, etc., and whether or not it's enough. Now, I know that it's the beginning of June and you are likely looking forward to summer, or summer is already here, right? School might have ended for your family, and you might be feeling like you've got it all figured out, that you're going to kick back this summer. You're going to be more social. You're going to set up the fire pit more often. You're going to invite more people over to your house. And you're going to schedule more appointments in your life that help you feel better. And while being social and putting commitments on your calendar that help you get out of the house are absolutely necessary, we all realize throughout the pandemic that as humans, we are social beings, right? This is so, so critical. I am 100% on board with those activities staying in your life. Okay, so make sure, I just want to say this again. I'm not telling you that you're not supposed to keep those appointments. Do it. Keep it going, right? They serve a purpose. And I want to stretch you outside of your comfort zone to wonder whether or not those skills of keeping those appointments and having that standard for yourself is enough for you to manage your emotions on a daily, weekly basis, for you to slow down in the day-to-day experiences that you have in life, to notice what there is to be appreciative of in your day, and then also to dream bigger and to stay focused on your big life aspirations. Okay, that's the conversation that I love to have with my clients, that I love to have with the people that we work with. I love to have that conversation with my team over and over again, because we get this one life. We get this one life where we get to decide what it is that what we're after and why we're here on this earth. Why do we get put here? It's not to just let the day by day pass us by and hold on for the weekend. And that was a huge shift that I had to make for myself, that I did over a decade ago, probably at this point, 13, 14 years ago, where I was just living for the weekends. I was living for the freedom that I had after my work was done. And while I enjoyed my work, I was a child therapist at the time. I enjoyed going to work. I also was burnt out, not because my workload was too heavy. I mean, if you compare the therapists of today, they're seeing upwards of 30, 40 clients a week on average. I was working at 20, 22, 25 maxed out at that level. And that's just simply not what most therapists who work for a company are dealing with today. So I had it easy, right? I had it easy trying to keep track of that many appointments and in that many families and all of those circumstances in my mind and in my notes for a 40-hour work week. And yet, for me, it was very challenging to feel not just gratitude, but to envision more for my life than just work that is separate from play. And I want to encourage you to think differently than I thought back in the day. And I want us to talk about what it took for me to completely change not only my profession in terms of my professional focus, how I showed up at work, because I didn't change that right away. And then also how I experienced my mindset, what I was telling myself, how I was thinking about the world, how I was perceiving my focus and my responsibilities in life, and the internal conversation I was having with myself, something I was just completely not privy to until I started to experience that side effect of stress, which was insomnia for me. And again, many of you might know my story. That was partly because my sister had developed anorexia, and I was just exceptionally stressed out by the worry that she would not survive that diagnosis, because it's a deadly one. And the fear that I had was keeping me up at night, right? But before that fear got to how heavy it was, I had been living my life through fear. On a daily basis, just focusing on the future, never present to the moment, constantly wondering what the next thing was going to happen, paying attention to the next hour, waiting for the next hour to be over, future focused to the point where I am escaping the present. That is fear-based living. I had no idea. I just called myself a type A high performer at the time. And my perspective was that I was going to do my very best job at work. So I was present in the sense that I was paying attention to the conversations I was having at work, but emotionally and intentionally, I was not present to the moment. I was not intentionally choosing how to be the very best person in that moment, to show care, compassion, and a thorough attention to detail that brought my whole self to the appointments that I had with my clients, because I was trained not to. I was trained to compartmentalize. Don't bring yourself, bring the theory. Don't bring yourself, bring the therapeutic approach, right? So you can be yourself a little bit. It was what was trained in me as a therapist. But also, personally, I didn't have the emotional skill set to be my true self at work and be my true self at, with my clients in a way that felt relaxed, not because I was trying to be a professional, because of course at work, I'm not saying you need to burp in front of your people, call that being your true self, right? I'm saying that, of course, within a level of professionalism, I was still buttoned up. I was still withholding my opinions, my boldness, my gumption that I know God gave me to speak, because as a child, that's who I was. I was smart as a whip and bold as a boulder, if you want to say it. I don't know. That's probably some silly little thing I just made up, but that was squashed in me in childhood. It wasn't a part of me that was really showing up effectively, because at that point I had been withholding that part of my personality and had been trained and conditioned by society and my personal experiences, whether that be in bullying or how I was parented, that, every time I had an opinion, it was considered back talk, right? Traditional parenting. Instead of shaping me to say and ask it nicely, right? Or giving me the opportunity to rephrase my language and do that more regularly, our parents didn't really know how to do that, right? And so instead I learned, if you had something to say, withhold it unless it's like, beating you down, right? So until you're at the edge of your rope, that's when you get to the point where you start to be bold. And at that point, I still wasn't very good at being bold. I wasn't effective at communication at that level because it was still kind of offensive. I had developed this masterful way to disguise my boldness with laughter. And I even had a supervisor who said, Megghan, when you need to call your clients out on something, you do it in such a compassionate manner because you are communicating with joy the challenges that they have. And I had to have that skill set shaped into the clinical world. We call this irreverence. It's necessary for DBT providers to call it straight and be bold and be direct, because it's part of the evidence-based protocol when somebody is engaging in life-threatening behavior. And that was where DBT for me really took off, because I was allowed to be direct. And in any other setting, I was told to just reflect feelings, just wait for the person, the client, to eventually come to their own conclusions. And that protocol just never really sat well with me, because I am a fast-paced person. So waiting for somebody to eventually see what I was able to see about them was torture. It was exhausting to do that. And yet I didn't have the skill set to be directly kind, compassionate in my direct language. And so I had to figure this out through lots of reading, lots of self-reflection, lots of investment in my own personal coaching and support, because I didn't learn it in my professional education. I didn't learn it in the supervision that I'd received to become a play therapist. That just simply wasn't the value of the profession that I had experienced. And I want to bring this to your attention, because if you were taught to be a teacher and raised in your professional way to learn how to behave in a bureaucracy, you probably were also stifled, right? Same thing for you in parenting. If this is one of your major life purposes, you probably learned from your parents to just keep your lips buttoned up and eventually hope that it all shakes out, right? Something like that. And this is leading to part of your burnout. It's leading to your constriction in your body. You're holding your breath, waiting for the shoe to drop. You're counting down the hours at work. You're hoping for people to eventually change in order for your needs to be met. And that is a very slow way to die. I'm going to just be blunt with you because, like I said before, I'm very good at that now, but it took me forever. And I want to talk about this because when this important shift I was able to make, I became much more free in my self-expression when I was calling people to their highest capacity. And that is what I knew I was born to do. That's why I know I'm here on this earth, is to help people make their own personal changes in how they want to show up in the world, what their goals are in their heart, and actually achieve them swiftly, not just like wait for other people to show up or other life circumstances to be in order to make that happen. Now, of course, and for me, I recognize that I'm not in charge of the world, and not everything that I want that's on my heart is going to happen regularly. I had to absolutely learn how to be patient for my dreams to happen and how to methodically assess whether or not I'm on my way to reach my dreams, because my dreams are very big and lofty. And so it was not something I could acquire, immediately. So I definitely you have to learn both, right? You have to learn how to be patient while also making clear and consistent steps towards the goal that you want. And so when I'm talking about this self-care, you're like, Megghan, why is this related, right? The self-care that I was doing, I was going to Zumba class. I was taking, I was taking exercise classes to pay attention to my body. I was working with a personal trainer. I was doing all of those self-care things, but that's where my ability to be present to the moment and work on myself was kind of honed in. And that was the time of day that I felt like I could just be in the moment and experience strength, experience fun. For me, I love to dance, so that was a blast. And the let loose experience that I had, I was waiting for that hour of the day. I was doing this exercise, set 5 days a week, and I was just waiting for that fun and that joy. And, my exercise goals changed over the years. So it wasn't necessarily just the fact that I loved to dance. Then it was weightlifting and heavy lifting in that respect. But so I've done the gamut, and I want to just use that as an example, not as a rule, right? For you, it might be walking, whatever. But I want to notice that the emotional experience you're having during that moment is one of calm, joy, and presence. Excellent. All right. I want you to observe whether or not you're doing that when you're under pressure. Whether or not when your kid is yelling at you, they're telling you they don't want to do something, they're melting down, they're screaming, right? They're losing control of their body and their mind and their heart. Whether you're experiencing this with a client, or you're dealing with this at work with your, God forbid, your boss talking to you in certain ways where it's toxic, coworkers that are just dropping the ball left and right, and you're ready to wring your hair out. I want you to know that it is possible for you to shift out of the stress even in the moment of feeling stressed. And that has to come from the way that you think. And I want to talk about this because if you've learned to coach yourself by just telling yourself to wait for the future, then the way you think you're coaching yourself and you're changing your mindset might sound like this, right? Might sound like, okay, Megghan, the lady is having a hard time at work. She's really a pain in the neck. Oh, that's not kind. This will be over soon. Let me just take a deep breath and wait for it to be over. What does that sound like? This too shall pass, right? Helpful statement, okay? Helpful statement when we're thinking about being patient and not emotionally exploding or imploding, yes. But not enough to be present in the moment enough to speak up, right? This too shall pass is an emotional statement you're making to yourself and a thinking process that is telling you to then wait for someone else to change, or wait for you to eventually think about the problem differently when you're out of the problem. So this too shall pass. Yeah, if you're a prisoner of war, if you're kidnapped, definitely hold on to that hope statement. Definitely use it. Okay? That's a survival mode level of thinking that is necessary to not explode or implode. Okay, we need that. We need that perspective shift. That is foundational. But what I'm talking about is much more advanced than that. The ability to talk yourself out of freaking out in order to not just wait for the experience that you're freaking out about to be over, right? But also cultivate a conversation in the moment with yourself to say what you really truly want to say in that moment that will be effective. Whether it's effective because you set a boundary for yourself, or it's effective because it becomes collaborative and it solves a problem with an upset person. That is the conversation that I want to have with you. That is proactive self-care. The skill set that leaders have to change how you think about a problem in the middle of that problem in a way that allows you to behave differently and much more effectively to influence people in that moment. That is a mindset skill set that is much more advanced than just waiting for your kid to stop screaming at you to eventually respond differently, or just waiting for your kid to be older, right? Because in the moment, if that's the only way you know how to talk to yourself, you are in fact rehearsing worries. You are in fact rehearsing thinking from an anxious mindset. Anxiety puts you in the past or the future, and in the thinking process. And when I dive into this concept and this understanding with my clients, oftentimes they realize that they're actually living much more anxiously than they thought they were, because their behavior pattern has been to just kick the can, the metaphorical can down the road, wait for the stressful moment to be over. And that is what most people will tell you that they're doing, and what you might think you're doing when you're telling yourself, just be calm, just be calm, just be calm. You're not actually calm though, are you? You're just waiting for the time to pass. You're holding your breath. You're experiencing a tight grip on your emotional expression so that you don't give somebody a look like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Or say that out of your mouth. Because either A, that's absolutely not professional, B, it's not respectful to ones you love, right? C, you know it's not going to get you to your outcome, whatever it is that you're doing in that moment. And I want to give you the opportunity to think bigger than that. What if you could notice that thought of, you got to be kidding me? Notice how frustrated and overwhelmed you are by that thought, as well as by your reaction and the fact that you're offended by how this person is talking to you or how this person is behaving at work. Slow down enough to not even say something at that level out loud to yourself, mumbled under your breath. This is ridiculous, right? Instead, not even jump to the conclusion that this is a bother at all. Instead, feel confident that you can do hard things and also respond in a way that is helpful, healthy, and influential for someone else. Because followers will wait for other people's behavior to eventually slow down to then choose how to respond. Leaders will make their behavior non-contingent to someone else's behavior. Leaders have a level of steadiness where they know that their odds are that they will more likely influence other people towards what they're looking for in a reaction and standards in an interaction in a relationship for themselves if they are more proactive in changing how they think about people and in changing how they think about themselves. And that's the self-care that's actually going to help you break out of burnout, break out of overwhelm and frustration and aggravation, even if you have young children who are whining a lot, even if you have a boss that has a panic pants wardrobe, even, to quote my friend Sarah with her term panic pants, it's a lovely one. Even if you feel constantly bothered by the amount of balls that your coworker has dropped over the last month with this big project. This intensity that you're experiencing is only intense because of the conclusions that you jump to, because of the offense that you hold, and because of your lack of confidence in yourself to influence the dynamic. And you can influence a one-on-one relationship. You might not be able to influence the entire bureaucracy you work for, or the entire corporation that you work for, or the entire system that you work for if it's outside of your household. However, your relationships will change in that micro subset, your team, your department, when you change how you show up at work. With your clients, same thing, right? And people will either step up to your standards or they will step off the relationship train with you. And that is what allows you to shift the dynamic that you might have with other people. And their choice to step off doesn't have to be this big overarching blowout extravaganza that your mind might be telling you it's going to have to happen that way. So typically what I've found is that when people have effective boundaries in their communication style, most people, unless they're very, very toxic people who have no self-awareness, will actually shift their behavior when they realize that their behavior is no longer acceptable in the relationship. And that's the general awareness of how most people behave. Most people in the world are not toxic. Okay. So I want to give you the opportunity to not just think differently, but also ask yourself, how am I seeing the way that I take care of myself? Is there a way for me to change this dynamic in the moment? And if you want to learn more about that, we are running a free event on Wednesday of this week. So at the time of this show, that is tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And in that meeting, I'm going to talk about the principles that I had to change and adopt in order to withstand the interactions that I've had. And this is how I talk to my spouse, how I talk to my children, how I interact and hold standards for the family, how I engage with my children in public around people that I care about who might have a different opinion than me about how children should be raised, and as well as at work, whether I'm working with strangers who want to engage our team to hire us, whether or not I'm talking to vendors with our company, or I'm working with my team members. And I've been using these mindset shift skills in the moment to break out of my initial reactivity that was, back in the day, I was given the nickname Mad Meg. I was explosive in my frustration. I was unabashedly angry, like zero self-respect in that respect. And obviously, you kind of poisoned the waters, if you will, in work situations. And thankfully, not for the people and not for me, but for me in that circumstance, the vast majority of the anger and frustration that I had expressed and experienced wasn't client facing, because at first, and the vast majority where I let that out was was when I worked in the restaurant business. So a lot of that was behind the wall of the kitchen. But my coworkers experienced it, and that wasn't healthy for anybody, and not kind, certainly. So and then also behind closed doors, frustration, venting, engaging with my coworkers. So not at them, because that would have been unprofessional, but verbally processing with heat and fire and aggravation. That was not the way that I was, no, that's not what I was put on this earth to do, was just vent and complain. So that aggravation and frustration was a side effect of my lack of emotional presence. So I want to, thankfully, had very forgiving coworkers and friends who were friends, that I allowed myself to be vulnerable with my very clear, obvious lack of skill set there. So I still was able to maintain those friendships, but It wasn't how they communicated their frustration. So definitely not something that was a culture that was healthy for anybody involved. And so I want to talk about this skill set that you might be having, right? Because there's a very big difference between venting and emotionally processing and communicating that you know how to handle something to yourself so that you don't need to vent to other people. So that you can actually share and work through a problem with someone, but then also not, work through the problem yourself in that moment, and be present of mind to what you know you're here to do in your life's purpose. Okay, so if that's a skill set that you want, then I'm happy to walk through the principles that we cover and what's necessary and what you're going to need to prioritize. So go to megganthompsoncoaching.com. And you'll find the Be the Example Summit link at the bottom of today's show. It's be-the-example-summit. And we're going to work with you tomorrow on this focus for the event. So I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye. Oh, and the registration is free. If you get your VIP ticket, $47, you can ask questions, you can get coached live, we can walk you through some of the challenges that you'll have. You'll also get access to the replay at the VIP level for this in the inner circle, as well as access to our values compass journal that you'll be able to walk yourself through. It's a downloadable PDF that you can really hone in on why you're here, what your focus is, what's necessary for you why you're here on this earth, and then what is most important to you, so that you can make values-based decisions rather than reactive-based decisions, not only in terms of how you care for yourself, regarding some of the emotional skill sets that you already have, right? Taking care of yourself, booking appointments, all that I already mentioned. And then also the challenges that you're having internally, how you're talking to yourself, and make those values-based decisions in that respect as well. Okay? All right, let's dive in. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow, seeing you there. Okay? And make it a great day.